All right, what's up, friends? It's Davin. I'm back for another episode of the Free Your Voice, Free Your Life podcast. Super happy that you're here, especially for this episode. Look, wherever you're streaming this episode, if you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, wherever, I'm just going to encourage you, maybe just for this episode or maybe some going forward, to head on over to youtube.com/Davin Youngs. That's youtube.com/DAVINYOUNGS, because there you'll find um, the whole archive of every podcast episode I've ever done and some of my creative work, videos, performances, etc. But you'll also find a full video version of this podcast episode, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. Um, but it took me sort of engaging what it is that I'm going to share with you today to be willing to pull the trigger. Essentially, I want to tell you a little bit more about me and my journey and my story. And I wanted this to be like, I don't know, us sitting down for a coffee and getting to know each other in this way. So whatever, you can listen to the audio if that suits you, but if you want to check out the video, it's there for you as well. Okay, so here's the deal. One of the most common questions I get asked often is, how did you end up doing this? And whenever someone asks me that, it creates a little bit of a shudder within, because it feels like it's so overwhelming to try to tell my story. And so I've been thinking about doing this episode for a couple of reasons. One, to bring you along for the journey of how I have created specifically the Reset and Voxus, and what were the various sort of aspects of my learning, my growth, that pointed me in this direction to culminate in this way. And I'm sure you relate to this aspect of me that's a little bit freaked out and trying to tell that, because wherever you are in your life right now, there have been a really complex, miraculous, weird, strange, wonderful series of events that have brought you there. And yeah, that's just like the curious part about being human. And then we get in these situations and we're supposed to explain it quickly. And in my case, and maybe in your case too, the path that I've ended up heading down is pretty unique, not traveled in this specific way. And so it takes a little bit more nuance of understanding to share. So, what I want to do for this episode is talk to you about the creating of Voxus, which is my professional team building, leadership development activity where I bring improvisational singing to corporate and professional groups, and the Reset, which is my signature immersive sound healing experience that I'm currently traveling all over the country and performing and bringing. Um, the reason I need to tell you about both of these things at once is because they grew out of similar sources. They come from a very similar place, and that might not seem apparent upon first glance. You know, when I tell people about the work that I do, I typically tell them that my work has three facets, but that they all center the voice, singing, sound, and those three things as tools for healing, for personal growth, development, and transformation. Um, on this podcast, I talk mostly or most often about my work in the coaching sphere, where I use singing and voice and sound as a path for personal growth, personal development, stepping into a freer, more easeful, more authentic life. But the ways in which I do that in these other two capacities, one is through improvisational singing, and one is through sound as a healing modality. They're all different facets of my same path of learning. Okay, you ready for this? So if you go back to the very first episode of the podcast, you'll hear my story with my voice. And the quick recap of that is that I grew up singing classical music. I had a proclivity for singing classically from a very young age. Starting at age 11, I studied classical voice, and I went to a conservatory for music. So I graduated at the age of 21, having really spent a lot of time and effort into trying to be an opera singer. But when I got to 21, it suddenly hit me that maybe that wasn't the path for me. And so there was a lot of deconstructing of things that I had learned. And that awareness, that realization happened to be um, congruent with a lot of other areas and aspects of my life that I needed to pull apart and really ask myself as an adult, do these feel aligned with the life that I want to live? So if you want to get a more in-depth version of that story, head back to episode of one of this podcast. The podcast was called The Sound of You at that point in time. But I think I did a pretty good job of capturing the nuances of that. And as a result of that part of my life, I ended up working with a teacher named Jeannie Lavetri, who I learned a methodology called somatic voice work. She was really pivotal in my life around changing my ability to make sounds with more freedom and more ease. And I'm forever, ever grateful to her for the work that she did with me. But after my time with her is where I want to pick up with you, because this is where things got, let's say, really unique. So I had done all this work with Jeannie, and I had really made some real transformation in my voice. I was singing like I had never sung before. But at the end of that work, I still had this hovering question, and it was simply, what do I sing? I literally was in my late 20s and just thinking to myself, I guess maybe even in my early 30s, like, I don't know what to sing. I know that I had cultivated the sound that pointed me towards classical music, towards operatic singing, but that just doesn't feel aligned. And how do I show up in this world and make sounds that feel creatively true, feel honest? And so I'd heard about this workshop at a place called the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. A number of people that had done somatic voice work had also gone to this workshop with Bobby McFerrin called Circle Songs. And I just thought to myself, and the premise of the workshop was around improvisational singing. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought to myself, I don't know what the hell to sing. So maybe I should go check out this community where people are improvising, where they're making it up. So I did. And in 2015, I headed to Rhinebeck, New York. And I'll never, ever forget the very first day of Circle Songs with Bobby McFerrin, because I walked into this great hall, this beautiful room, and there were 180 people in that room. And I don't even think there was a verbal introduction into the space. I think that Bobby and his crew that leads Circle Songs, I think they just started singing. And before I knew it, I was so overcome and so overwhelmed with emotion that the truth of the matter is that very first day of the workshop, I couldn't participate. I couldn't even sing because I was so emotionally, I mean, the best way to say it is overwhelmed by the sound of all of these people's voices together. It moved me so deeply, and it felt like it connected to a part of me that I hadn't been able to connect with for quite some time. So I was so grateful. It harkened back to experiences I had in youth at church. You know, my father was a minister, and as a result of that, I spent a lot of years leading people in devotional and spiritual singing, and this felt like that, but it felt more expansive. And in reflection, I also think that probably those tears that I was feeling that were coming to my eyes, you know, a big part of that were connected to awe and wonder and amazement, but also some of it was grief, some of it was sadness for the times in my life, the years of my life that I wasn't connecting with that feeling, that I wasn't connecting with that mystery, that wonder of what the human voice is and what it has the capacity to do and what it means to be in deep connection with others in using it. And the real magic of circle singing, the real magic of circle songs. So just to give you a quick description, Bobby stands up in front of this group. He starts singing, he starts improvising, he makes all these sounds. Weird stuff I had never heard before. It wasn't scat, it was something a little bit different. And then he lands on these repeated patterns and he would give them over to members of the circle, to a section of the circle. And before you knew it, he was coming up with a different pattern and a different pattern. And then there'd be like 5, 6, 7 patterns going. And suddenly we were in this orchestra of voices, of sound. And it was just repeating, and it was meditative, and it was spiritual, and it was connecting, and it was rhythmic, and it was embodied. And what I realized right away in that moment, that it wasn't at all about how good anyone sounded. It wasn't about how successful they were as performers. It wasn't about the years in which they had studied singing or if they'd never studied singing. It was about all of us using our voices to hold down the part, to contribute to making the music for the community. It was all about the people. It was all about the community. And it was so spectacular in that regard. And so I spent maybe like 7 days. I think the workshop was 7 days. It was long. And in many ways, it was a real turning point in my life because I felt like I just woke up to what it means for me to use my voice in a different way and what it means to be in community around using the voice. So I came back to Chicago and I was looking for a circle singing community in Chicago. And there wasn't one, which is surprising because these communities, they exist all over the world. This was a global community that came together. And literally, if you look for a major city, you're probably going to find some people that are doing this together. But no one was doing it in Chicago. So because I am who I am, I said, we got to do this here. And I started a group in Chicago. And that was a really fun, playful, joyful experience. I didn't know what I was getting into, but we started to gather monthly. And then at times we gathered twice a month where people would come to my studio and we would improvise and we would sing together. And one of the ways in which I started to practice at getting better at leading this was I bought a looper. And if you're not familiar, a looper is a device. It can be a software now where you can record things and you can loop them, put them on a circular pattern, and then add additional loops on top of it. You can add additional recordings, like let's say of your voice or various instruments. But I got a looper and I got it to practice leading circles, to practice bringing people into spontaneous song by just doing it alone with my voice. And I spent hours doing this. Now, this is very much tied, this season of my life is very much tied to the origin of Voxus and the reset. Because at that time, I was really gaining my skill as a leader and as a facilitator. And when I tell you that I was obsessed with doing this, I mean, I can't overstate the amount of time that I spent by myself going Barasekundeske Dorape Sultakea Burate Sumpakakea Burate Sumpakakea, and I would record that Burasekum Kakakea Burasekum Kakakea, and then I get that going and I create another part over it Asekularea Burasekum Kakakea. You got me? See what I'm doing there? And what happened is while I was doing that, I was sitting with these recordings, listening to myself, fantasizing about doing it in front of other people. And I started to think, this sounds kind of good. I kind of like this. It's not music, but it's kind of music. And it feels really creatively invigorating. And I started to get better at leading our community groups. And then it hit me, what if I brought this as a way for corporate teams to connect and run more deeply and expand outside and do something unique and different? And I developed then, right in that moment, Voxus. I had this idea. I had some friends that I hashed it out with at the time, and I hit the ground running. I managed to get a friend to hire me, which is so crazy when I think about it. She was a friend that I had for a long time. She worked for a company, actually a commercial real estate firm. She had an event coming up where they were going to get all of their accountants together and that they were going to work on leadership and stepping outside of their comfort zone. And she hired me to come in, and I had a comrade at a time, a woman named Allison Wedding. Shout out to Allison, one of the most gifted and talented singers and improvisers I've ever met. And together we went and got this professional group to sing together and to make circles. And we talked about the value of singing together in community and what it means to use your voice and to find your voice and to contribute your voice and how every voice matters. And it was just a really powerful, scary as hell, but powerful experience of bringing a group into collective song that you would not have imagined would ever do that together. So I hit the ground running with Voxus, and I got that job. I got a couple other jobs. I managed to get a really beautiful job with another friend who worked for Coca-Cola. We did this for a bunch of chief marketing officers in California, and it felt really, really exciting and really promising. But we got to put a pin in this because the story shifts and changes a little bit. Because I also felt simultaneously at that time, I was teaching and coaching a lot, and burnout was starting to creep in for me. I was feeling overwhelmed wanting Voxus to take off more because the jobs were few and far between. Even though the jobs I got were great, they were difficult. At the time, I felt like they were difficult to manifest, to make happen. A lot of people would tell me what I was doing sounded like a really good idea. They really loved the idea in theory, but they didn't necessarily want to hire me because it felt really risky and crazy. It felt like their team wouldn't do that. And then simultaneously, in my coaching practice, I was at sort of like an all-time high. I had so many clients. I was in demand in a way like I hadn't been before. And I was really, in hindsight, very unboundaried about who I was working with. And I just started to simply burn out. And so in that time, I was frustrated with Voxus because I felt like it wasn't yielding the result I wanted as quickly as I wanted. And I think in hindsight, part of the reason that I felt that way is because I saw it as a way out from the overwhelm I felt around my teaching and my coaching practice. I also, at this time in my life, was really engaging other spiritual practices like yoga, mindfulness and meditation. I was really engaging learning about Buddhism. Um, and I can see this pocket, I can see this portal, I can see this window in time in my life as a really, really difficult time, but also a really rich time where ultimately I did come to the realization that I had burned out and that I had to take a break from teaching and coaching. And at that same time, I decided to just like hit pause on Voxus because I wasn't willing to, at that time, do the work that I needed to do to make it really pop off, to make it really go. And I was just overwhelmed. I was totally overwhelmed. And through a lot of therapy, a lot of long conversations with my partner, I decided to do something that I called a radical sabbatical. I took 3 months. I stopped teaching. I stopped coaching. And I told people it was just going to be a summer thing. I was going to stop in June and I'd pick back up in September. But what I really knew in doing that is when you stop something, when you've been in a hamster wheel, even if it's like an appearingly good hamster wheel, but if you've been in a hamster wheel and you've been overwhelmed, when you actually stop it, there's not a chance in hell that you're going to get back on it. And so at that time in my life, at that moment, I hit pause on Voxus. I stopped Voxus. I stopped teaching. I stopped coaching. I kept doing circle singing. I kept doing the community aspect of circle singing. Um, but I just took those months to, I don't know, get lost, to really get lost. And I've talked about this on the pod before, but this was simultaneously one of the most difficult seasons of my life, identity wise. I totally lost track of who I was. And I think that that was by design. Um, I had many dark nights of the soul, many moments of deep loneliness. Um, Creative identity felt very confused. But I also had this profound awakening that happened during that time. And it turns out that we have to lose ourselves in order to find ourselves often, that we have to give up some of the ways in which we have been operating and being, even if on the surface they look like, I was just saying to a friend yesterday, I remember at that time, I thought to myself, how could I be burned out from teaching people to sing? Like, how is that possible? I'm not like going to a bank and working every day. I'm not in an ER. Um, but in hindsight, I had just been so unboundaried with what I was doing. And I was saying yes to things that depleted me. And I wasn't nurturing my inner artist, my inner singer, my creator. And I let my tank run empty and I kept pushing through. And Voxus, even though it was a great idea at the time, it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back because I saw that I had this great idea, but I didn't have the energy to pursue it. I didn't have the willingness to be on the phone calling human resources people at offices trying to get them to hire me. And so I tapped out. I tapped out. The 3 months went by, and during that 3 months, creative brilliance. Like, it was so much richness in that time, that loneliness, that simultaneously feeling lost. It was met with hours alone in my studio with that looper making those sounds over and over again by myself. going to yoga class, and at the end of a yoga class, experiencing what you might have heard of is like a sound bath or a gong wash. And so I'm in the studio by myself with my looper running with all these thinking to myself, what if I did this for a sound bath? What if people came in and laid down and I created all these different loops of sound like a drone that shifted and changed and moved, and it centered my voice? And what if I integrated the crystal singing bowls that I like so much at the sound bath? And what if I integrated the gong and the tuning forks? And then I went to a sound healing retreat. I headed back up to upstate New York to another place called the Menla Institute. And I experienced for the first time some teaching and learning around sound as a healing modality. And everything I heard, it aligned with everything I knew about my voice. It actually aligned with everything that I had discovered with circle singing, that there are these ways in which we can use sound in community and within ourselves. And it can feel like it transforms us. It can feel like it vibrates our being in a way that facilitates change. And that was so different from how I grew up feeling that singing needed to be something that I performed, that I presented, that it was something that I had to be acceptable at, something that I had to put on a facade to share. And so during that time, then I started to just by myself record and create these experiences. And then in 2018, at the end of my sabbatical, I didn't go back. To be perfectly honest with you, I didn't spend as much money as I thought I was going to during those months. It's amazing when you pull back how it's easier than you think it is, or how you think it's going to be. When you make a radical change in your life, you suddenly find yourself willing to um, live a little bit differently. And so I had some money and I had a little more time, a little bit longer of a runway. And in 2018, when I didn't go back to coaching and teaching, I decided to continue to explore this sound healing modality. And I created my first experience at a yoga studio in Chicago. I got this amazing guy who goes by the name Gyan Arjun at the time. And he collaborated with me. He played the gongs while I created these loops with my voices. And I had purchased some crystal singing bowls at the time. And we got some friends to come, and they gave us really positive feedback. They were like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that was, but it was very cool. And it really excited me. It not only nurtured me on a personal level, but it really felt creatively invigorating. I felt like I was able to use all of the tools that I had learned from Bobby and circle singing. And I felt like I was able to integrate those with the spiritual practices that I had been engaging, like yoga and Buddhism and mindfulness and meditation. And I felt like I was able to bring people into community, and it centered the voice. And that felt so exciting. And I was able to turn on the parts of my brain that love to improvise. And I was able to even satisfy the part of me that like didn't know what to sing. I was able to just sing, and whatever I was singing was the thing that I was supposed to sing. And if I could keep my attention and intention on having it be in support to the people that were in the space and the place, it felt really damn good. So good. And so I started to do it more and more. And I set up events all over the city, and I partnered with hotels and yoga studios and mindfulness studios, and I did professional events. And I started to create these sound baths or immersive sound experiences or sound journeys or sound healing. There are so many different words that people use to describe this. And there was momentum. People liked what I was doing. Okay, you ready for this? Fast forward 2022. Someone comes to one of my events. She says to me, we want to have you do this on the stage of Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I was like, wait, what? She said, yeah, I'm a part of the board, one of the junior boards at the CSO. And we have an idea to do this on the stage of Orchestra Hall where the Chicago Symphony Orchestra performs. And I was like, badass, let's do it. So 2023 rolls around. I get the opportunity to do it. And on a scale that I've never done this before. One of the things that's unique about what I do when I create these immersive sound healing experiences is that they're both acoustic. So I use these instruments and even my voice sometimes acoustically without amplification, but I also use amplification. So everything I'm singing, all the looping I'm doing, and just so you know, I add on all these different effects too. So it creates this sort of ever shifting and growing landscape, this recording that I'm creating, sonic pad. So that's electronic. And the beauty of that is that it allows me to scale, amplifying my voice. I can do it on a really big scale. And so we did this at the orchestra hall. We did this with the home of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and we sold 300 plus tickets. And there were people strewn about the auditorium. And it was such a satisfying experience. And I never felt in my life so aligned. I felt like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This feels so damn good. And I walked home from that experience and I sat on my sofa and I said to my partner, I wonder if I could do this like at other similar venues. Like, I wonder if there's a way to take this experience and grow this rather than running around for smaller yoga studios, which was so fun, but also, to be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't very financially viable, or it felt like it was going to be challenging to make that profitable. And I saw this opportunity where we were selling more tickets and my work felt really aligned. Like it didn't feel like it compromised it in any way. In fact, it felt like it grew it. And his response was like, yeah, of course you can. Of course, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. He's like, yeah, you can totally do it. So over the next couple of months, I built this brand around this idea of selling this experience, not trying to market myself as a performer, but marketing this experience that I call the reset. Okay, put a pin in that. Let's go back to Voxus. So I'm working on the reset. I'm working on building the website. I'm working on courting big venues. Just at that moment, I get an email. Someone has seen my video from back from 2016 where I'm promoting Voxus. Now, mind you, it's 2023. And they're a planner for an upcoming conference. And they say to me in the email, are you still doing this thing? Because I have a conference and the client wants for there to be a singing component. They've done these other things like this and they found it to be really successful. And I was like, yes, I'm doing it. Even though I hadn't done it in a number of years, yes, I'm doing it. Yeah. So the quick story with this is there was an email exchange and the gig didn't end up happening. But what that did to me in that moment was go, why am I not pursuing this? Why did I put Voxus to bed? I still fully, wholeheartedly believe in this concept. In fact, why am I not doing this in community? Why am I not? We hit pause on circle singing in Chicago during the pandemic, but it was now 2023. Why am I not bringing this back? So, like a lightning bolt, I decided that both Voxus and the reset were going to be active parts of my life. I now had the energy. I had recuperated the energy. I'd come back to coaching and teaching too on totally different terms. Only going to work with people that align with the work that I do best. Only going to give the amount of hours on any given week that feel like are sustainable for me. Only going to do this on the terms that feel like they will facilitate growth, that won't burn me out. And so I'm coming into the season of my life feeling so locked in, and I have the spaciousness, I have the capacity to pursue these other ventures. I don't know, just in deep, sorry to overuse the word, but in deep alignment with myself. It felt so radical. I felt ready to do all of it, ready to do all of these things. And so what did I do? I rebuilt the Voxus website. I redid the video simultaneously with the reset. And I started to put it out there. And last year, 2023, I started doing a tremendous amount of work around manifesting, really getting my mind set on this idea of what are the opportunities that I can create for myself that feel really aligned with my being, that feel really aligned with my talents, where I am at this point in my life. I'm in my 40s. I feel so skillful in so many ways, and I feel so ready, and I'm just looking for the opportunities. How do I create these things? So you can see that these both, both of these experiences, both of these opportunities that I create, Voxus and the reset, they pull on different parts of my being. Voxus is very, um, I don't know, performative. It's very much high energy. It's very much about being a leader. It's very much about community. It's very much about energy. Um, and just also to add to this, simultaneously last year, we rebooted Chicago Circle Singing, which is our community circle singing gathering. And I mean, hot take on this group has grown like I never could have imagined when I did it before the pandemic. Our last gathering, we had 85 people from the community come together to do circle singing. The most I ever had before that was like 30 people. So crazy that this is happening now too. This just goes back to everything have shared with you in the past around like allowing the momentum to gather and really investing in the areas of your life that feel good, investing in, pursuing joy and happiness and alignment. And yeah, so all of these things are happening for me at once. But while Voxus and Chicago Circle Singing are very high energy and very public and outward, the reset is very much about holding space, using those same tools for the inner work, the traveling within, the community healing that's quiet and subdued and supported and surrounded. But I'm literally using the same tools. I'm using my voice, I'm using improvisation, I'm using my belief in sound as a vehicle for change. I'm using in my commitment to the voice as one of the fastest tools for healing, for transformation, for connection. And I believe so wholeheartedly in both of these experiences to potentially be the catalyst for shifting someone's life dramatically. The same way I believe in my coaching work as a turning point. And I say that because I've had the experience. I've had the experience of doing a yoga class all the way back in 2017. And at the end of the yoga class, someone playing the gong and me feeling like I left my body, me feeling like I exited the limitations of this physical form and caught a glimpse of myself and what is actually possible for myself. And when you have those experiences, it's so common. So many people have this happen where you can't help but want to share them in your own way. And you remember the part of my story where I'm at Omega and I'm in that hall with 180 people and I'm so overwhelmed by all their voices that I can't stop crying. And I know what it is to be in community with others using the voice and just feeling like a little bit of heaven in my heart. And I know what that's like in contrast to the other ways in which my life feels like a struggle, feels like a challenge, it feels like it's suffering. And so I believe and know wholeheartedly that these experiences can be the path to waking up. And the beautiful part about both of them is I'm taking them to unexpected places. Like that's my gift. That is my calling, is to go into a room full of accountants and get them to sing together. My gift, my calling is to go on a stage of an orchestra hall that's never done anything like a sound bath or a sound healing, and to be the sort of sage that burns in the space that goes, you can do this different. You don't have to do this in an alienating way. You can include so many new people. You can use music explicitly as a tool for healing. You don't have to uphold some image of this is how we do things. You don't have to cling to the past, that you can step into the future of music and healing and sound and voice and singing and community as the ultimate path toward growth, toward human flourishing, toward development, toward transformation. This is my gift. This is my calling. This is where I am right now. And I'm so excited about these things, and it's happening. It's happening. I can't believe it, but it's happening. I'm traveling all over the country, bringing the reset in those places. I literally got to travel to Portugal with Voxus. I mean, within a year, I'm getting these opportunities, and it's because of you, because of all of the people that have supported me and my work and have shown up and have invested time and energy and curiosity and reciprocity. And it's also because I hold so wholeheartedly this inner knowing, this inner deep belief that my voice can be a transformative tool for so many. And that's not even specific to me. That the thing about that knowing within me is it's what allows me to know it's true for you too. And so I travel on in the wisdom. I bring these experiences to these various places in the wisdom and knowledge that there is something so important about being alive right now. There's something so important about the message that people like you and me can bring to this world. And the only thing that we have to do is show up authentically and honestly and in our deepest creative selves. The only thing that we have to do is follow the little breadcrumbs that don't make sense to anyone else. The ones that taste really delicious and feel really good. And we have to say yes to the things that light us up. And we have to say no to the things that feel like they deplete us and pull us down. And we have to step more fully into the aspects of our person that we get positive feedback about. And people say, you look amazing when you do this. You sound amazing. You inspire me. If someone tells you that you're inspiring them just by doing the thing that you're doing, know that that's true. Own that. Step more fully into that. It's the best gift that you can give the planet, is to just show up and be yourself and do it in a way that feels full, feels open-hearted, and feels honest. So if you met me at a party and you're like, how'd you start doing all these things? It's like, I mean, look, the story that I just told you now, it's only, 1/100th of it. There are so many different aspects around meditation and mindfulness and spirituality and community and travel and growth. And there's a lot of other stuff that happened along the way. But at the heart of this is I've always felt a deep calling and connection to singing, voice, sound. And I found my way in through improvisational singing, thanks to Bobby McFerrin, thanks to another teacher named Rhiannon, thanks to Jeannie Levetri, thanks to the people that came to my sound baths, thanks to the people that came to my community circle singing events, thanks to Kimmy, who came to my sound bath and said, we want to do this on the stage of Orchestra Hall. Thanks to Orchestra Hall, who said, we'll do it again next year. Thanks to the various venues that are taking a risk on me doing this right now, that are facilitating. Thanks to Kathy Twells, who hired me all the way back in time, Mary Davenport at JLL and Coca-Cola. Thanks to Mihai, who brought me to Portugal now. The various companies that are interested in hiring me and bringing me to their events, their summits, their workshops. There's so much more ahead of me. There's so much more exciting, big stuff. I can't even wrap my mind around it. And I don't need to, because I feel right now in this moment the profound gratitude at these little morsels that led me to this delicious meal. And my friends, in a year, 2, 5, 10, I might come out with a totally different story, doing something totally different, and I'm absolutely open to that. But I do know deeply that this is the most aligned and in my calling I've ever been. And I just feel a profound sense of gratitude around all of it. So thank you. Thanks for being a part of it. Thanks for allowing me to share my story. Thanks for sharing your stories with me. I would love, love, love to hear from you. Thanks for staying in deep connection. That means so much to me. This ultimately is all about the people. Not even the voice, not even the singing is more powerful than the relationship. Our existence is contingent upon our deep connection to each other, because in it all, we are one. And the voice and the singing and the sound, it's just a reminder of that. It's a fast reminder. But thank you, thank you, thank you for being connected to me. I'm in deep gratitude. If you want to stay in deeper connection, follow me on Instagram at Davin Youngs. Love to find you there. Share this podcast with someone who might find it inspiring. Check out where I'm going, what I'm doing. You can find the easiest place is to find out at davinyoungs.com, but you can also go to the resetsoundexperience.com and voxusexperience.com. Forward the videos on to other people. If you live in Chicago, come to Chicago Circle Singing. ChicagoCircleSinging.com. Again, all these are housed at davinyoungs.com if that's just easiest. This week, I'll be at Ravinia here in Chicago in the northern suburbs. You can find me there on Thursday, the 11th. And in 2 weeks, I'll be in Nashville at 21st. I'll be at the Nashville Symphony Orchestra. Can you even believe that is a part of my story, that I went from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and now I'm going to be going to Nashville to do it. And there's some other orchestra halls in the future, which is so exciting. I'll tell you more about those in upcoming podcast episodes. But yeah, find me online, stay connected, send me an email. If you like this podcast, share it with other people, write a review. But I appreciate you, and I'm just going to leave that there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Peace.